let's talk about dosing around NAC, how to take NAC. So maybe you've watched this and maybe you're thinking, okay, I have several of these problems. Maybe I'm going to see if NAC is right for me and maybe give it a try. Now, there are several things that you will want to understand. So the first thing you want to understand is when we're talking about how to take NAC, the best way to take it, in a perfect world, you take it on an empty stomach, because you'll get better absorption that way. Now, you will still get good absorption if you take it with food, but if you can tolerate it on an empty stomach, take it on an empty stomach. Now, some people find with NAC that if they try to take it on an empty stomach, it can cause some stomach upset and nausea, and that's why I put a star here. You know, some people want to do things perfectly right. Don't think of it as doing it perfectly right. Think of it as take it how you can tolerate it. If you can take it on an empty stomach, do. If you can't, that's fine as well. Prevent that nausea, because it doesn't serve you to pop these pills and be nauseous all day long. So we're talking about oral dosing here. Now, what is the dosing structure around NAC in the medical research? So all those different diseases and all those different symptoms and other issues that we talked about today, the general dosing structure is anywhere from 500 to 2,500 milligrams per day. That's a pretty wide range, and I would say most people do really, really well on 1,000 to 1,500. And when I say really, really well, that means they tolerate it extremely well. And this, again, this is milligram dosing. Tolerate it really well with little or no side effects at all, other than beneficial ones, and it's really inexpensive to stay here. Now you can get you know, not if cost is not an option, you know, you can go higher. Certainly, people do, but you know, this is really affordable for most folks, and if you stay in that range, is very, very tolerable. And most of the research studies are generally anywhere from 600 to 1,200 milligram dosing structures. And the safety profile, again, is really, really great. There are studies that take use of NAC out over many months, and there are really not any known in humans major toxicity levels if you stick to it around this level. Even if you go as high as 2,500, most people would be pretty safe. Although I would make sure that you're being monitored if you go above 1,500. For long periods of time, you definitely want to make sure you're monitoring it and you understand. The toxicity doses, most of those were carried out in animals, and you know, most of the toxicity doses are several hundred milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So we would be talking about over 10,000 milligrams a day of dosing. You know, again, if you're trying to use animals as a comparative to humans, and so that. You know, for most people, that's not a super practical thing when you're buying NAC over the counter. Again, if you live in the U.S. Or Australia, you know, NAC is usually going to come in 500 milligram capsules. And so, you know, again, you know, it's 2 to 3 caps a day. Best on an empty stomach, maybe with food if it creates any at all nausea. One of the things I will also mention is if you go higher than this, what you want to really be cautious about, if you have a bad lifestyle, if you do a lot of alcohol, if you have a lot of processed food that's coming through, some people actually have what's called a Herxheimer effect, because their choices are so poor, their liver is struggling to such a great degree. Taking higher levels of NAC can actually engage the detoxification system, and so they're starting to detox at a much more rapid pace, and that can just cause some symptoms. Low-grade fever, malaise, fatigue, agitation, irritability, mood swings are very common symptoms. So if that's happening to you, you might just consider looking at your diet and your lifestyle a little bit more carefully, but also you might consider lowering your dose. Additionally, where we'll see higher doses of NAC be problematic for a person is if they're in a moldy environment. So if you have a mold infestation in your home and you're trying to ramp up your detoxification, that sometimes can make you go backwards. So again, many of you I know are chronically struggling, and you're watching this video because you're trying to figure things out nutritionally. But if you react really poorly to NAC, you might consider there's a possibility you could be in mold as well. Now, so these are, again, oral doses. I showed you this slide earlier. There are more than one way to take NAC, but oral is the easiest way because you can get it over the counter. It doesn't require prescription, again, if you live in the US or the UK or Australia. But there's also intravenous, which would require a prescription, and there's inhalation through nebulizers, which also requires a prescription. So if you're interested in taking NAC through IV, or if you're interested in taking it through a nebulizer, you, again, talk to your doctor and see if NAC is right for you. And I would encourage any of you listening to this, go back to those symptoms, go back to those illnesses that we talked about. If you're dealing with those or struggling with those, NAC might be a really, really good option for you to jump on board with. NAC is one of my favorite supplements for so many reasons. It's so versatile and it's so supportive, and the side effect profile is almost non-existent, and you can really get the doses up there. Plus, it's really super inexpensive to purchase. So pound for pound, it's one of my favorite. It's one of the top nutrients I keep in my nutritional medicinal cabinet, both at home but also in my practice. We pull NAC out on a daily basis. So I hope this crash course on NAC was helpful for you. If it was, drop me a comment below. Let me know what you enjoyed most. If I taught you something you didn't know, chime in and talk to me about it. So thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Dr. Osborne Zone.